Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another Media Matters by Anfield Index. The bad news is it's international break. The good news is the Reds are top of the league. Arne wins his first four away from home, 9 out of 10 in all competitions. And we've got to talk contracts again. And here to discuss it all, the game against Palace, everything that's going on Liverpool related, is David Lynch. David, Sunday night embargo, contract talk. That wasn't on the docket when we started before, was it really?
Yeah, it's always interesting when one pops out of nowhere and not exactly the contract update maybe would have expected, but an interesting one. And with Konate's one we've spoken about quite a lot actually about it's getting close and Liverpool need to do something there. So really good news on that. And I think with Quansah, been a bit of a frustrating start to the season for him, but absolutely no question marks over his talent and the fact that he is long term an unbelievable option for Liverpool. So I think just take it out as a separate issue to the other contracts, and I think it's good news really for Liverpool.
Yeah, it's a good news story, although telling that, judged by the reaction to social media, is a different scenario, but we'll come to that a little bit later. I mean, I want to get into the Palace game because it's the early kickoff, 1-0, a typical Diogo Jota style finish. A very up and down game, I heard someone describe it as, and I think that's quite fitting. What were your thoughts on this performance? Mixed, you could file it under as well.
Yeah, I thought mixed, but I tend to fall towards overwhelmingly positive on this, to be honest. Maybe that's me in general, but I just thought for 60 minutes, I was watching the game thinking this is the most complete performance we've seen so far under Arne Slot. I just thought Liverpool was so dominant in possession, dominant in winning the challenges all across the pitch, dominant in terms of creating chances and giving up basically nothing. And then when you don't get a second goal away from home in the Premier League, especially at a place like Palace, which, under Jurgen, it was typically a difficult place to go to, that 7-0 in COVID aside. I got a few wins there, but they were always kind of quite a few last-minute wins. So it is a tough place to go. And like I say, if you don't score the second, you give them a chance. That only needs one chance for the crowd to get up. It makes it really difficult. But I thought, even after that first 60 minutes when Liverpool weren't quite as good as they were in the first 60, they still managed it well, showed a lot of battling qualities, didn't give up really good chances, which is what is key and what we want to see. You look at the shot map that Palace had, and basically the best they have is kind of, I think they have one inside the box and the rest is just kind of sprinkled around it really. So shows you how well Liverpool kind of managed them and managed their threat, even though they got the tails up at the end and they had the chance to kind of nick something. And I think, you've got to factor in that Liverpool played a midweek game in the Champions League and Palace had a free week. That is important, and it is worth mentioning. It is why the game can kind of flip a little from 60 minutes onwards, because the fatigue of that starts to tell. And I know, obviously, you don't play 12:30s if you're away from home in the midweek. I still think that should just be, you don't play 12:30s if you've got a game midweek in the Champions League. It just doesn't seem right to me, that, to be honest. So, but what I thought was great was that, like I say, Liverpool managed that well and didn't give up much and come away. And I just think no question whatsoever that they deserved to win the game. It could have been more comfortable had they taken the chances, but it wasn't. And because it wasn't, they had to show a bit of battling qualities, but they did that. And so another really good win for me and a good performance.
Yeah, no doubts. Weirdly as well, considering like you mentioned, it's a 12:30. Arguably our best 45 of the season on another day where really should have been a couple ahead and the game's done realistically. I mean, there's probably really, despite that, only one answer to this question. Man of the match for you?
Well, I thought there's a few sort of contenders really in my head. I thought I want to give an honourable mention to Gakpo, who I thought was very, very good. Yeah. Just dangerous all day. He's such a good option to have to swap in for Luis Diaz, isn't he? Works hard, gets shots off, creates chances, obviously sets up the goal. Jota, if he'd have bagged the hat-trick that he should have, probably would have been up there. He got himself into position for chances, but just couldn't finish them off, but was generally pretty good, I thought. But it's hard, I think, to look beyond the centre halves between the pair of them. I thought possibly jointly man of the match. They're just absolutely dominant in everything they did. The reason that Palace could barely get a shot in that first hour is because those two were just on cruise control, really. And I mean, the team as a whole works really hard to stop good shots being taken, but it does come down to centre halves at times, and they've been flawless, not just in this game, but all season really. I mean, Liverpool have the best defensive record completely deservedly if you look at the expected goals numbers, and a big part of that is this partnership they've got going at centre half, and just absolutely bullied Palace from minute one to pretty much towards the end as well. So yeah, absolutely phenomenal. I find it hard maybe to split the pair of them. I just thought they were both brilliant, but yeah, it just they're performing out the skins at the moment.
It is unreal. Is it almost crazy? Do you think there's, I don't know, especially with Virgil van Dijk? I mean, you look at the player for the month of September, and quite deservedly, don't get me wrong, Diaz and Gravenberch get in there, but there's no mention at all from anyone of Virgil van Dijk. Whereas, like you said, I think he has been absolutely sensational this season. Is there almost a danger of a complacency creeping in with what we expect from Virgil? Obviously, he is just on another level from everyone else. We just expect him to be that almost every week.
Yeah, he's the best centre half in the world comfortably. I mean, the guy next to him might have a good shout to be next in line, to be honest. But I think, yeah, we can get a little bit blasé about just how good Van Dijk is. He's ridiculous, really, and it's so comfortably the best in the world that, you know, it is. You have an arrogance about it almost, and just let him go under the radar. And I think I think Salah got in a similar situation, really. He was performing at such a level that you just sort of took it for granted, really. The difference is with Van Dijk as well is he's not constantly giving reminders because he doesn't score every week. It's not kind of the decisive moment in the game in that sense. So he can go under the radar even more at times, but he's just ridiculous. I mean, all the things he's doing on the ball, again, you know, are just kind of freakish, and we do take those for granted. But the actual defending, the aerial duels that he just dominates every time, no matter who he's up against. Someone trying to outpace him, got absolutely no chance. The composure in tight areas. I mean, he's flicking the ball over someone's head to get himself out pressure. He's just performing at the moment as good as he ever has for me. I mean, I know people sort of talk about a drop-off. Maybe there has been one, but I personally cannot perceive it at the moment. I don't think he looks slower. I don't think he looks weaker in the aerial duels. I don't think his passing is as good as ever. He's, like I say, just the best centre-back in the world quite easily. And yeah, and I think he's still got a few more years of this ahead of him as well. So yeah, it does feel bad, really, that we don't sort of give him recognition enough, but it's you know, maybe sometimes we should highlight a little bit more frequently just how good he is, and it helps him as well. One of the reasons I think he's looking you know, as good as ever as well is that he's in a team that's a lot more sane in its setup as well. You know, he's just being allowed to do his job, and he is easily the best at that. So that's really, really helpful. But yeah, we shouldn't take him for granted because he's out of this world. He's surely the best defender ever, the best centre-back ever.
Yeah, in that shout, without doubt. And you mentioned his partner at the moment. I mean, those two have been brilliant. 7 Premier League games and only shipped 2 goals. And it was funny, even afterwards, you could tell Van Dijk was still annoyed talking about that Wolves game. It should have been won, as he said quite clearly. It's not to be derogatory in any way about Jarell Quansah or Joe Gomez, because they're excellent centre-halves at the same time. But is that a position where you're starting to think Liverpool's success may well be linked to keeping those two on the pitch as much as possible now?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, I think you could go. You know, if you get an injury somewhere and you've got to go 10 games of Jarell Quansah in there alongside Van Dijk, maybe, because I think he is the key of the two, really, just in terms of everything else he brings in terms of organisation and being the leader back there. He's so crucial. I don't think anyone else can kind of bring that, really. But I think, you know, like I say, if you go 10, 15 games with Jarell Quansah there, I mean, Liverpool didn't really miss a beat with Quansah in there last season, did they? I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. So I think they can do that. I think what is crucial is kind of keeping Van Dijk in there. That I think that is absolutely the most important element of it all. But I think, you know, I think Liverpool have got real strength in that position, and we shouldn't forget that Quansah is very, very good. But also, you know, saying all that, if Liverpool can keep Konate and Van Dijk fit for 38 games this season, then I think they will go close to winning the league. I think they'll be in the mix till late, which is all you can kind of hope for, is to be there till the 38th game. And if you do that, maybe you're the one who comes out on top. If they can keep those two playing together and playing the way they are, then they've got a very, very good shout, because they, you know, defensively the best team in the league at the moment. The underlying numbers show that, the actual numbers show that. and being good at defending, as Arsenal have shown, is very, very important in terms of going deep in title races.
Yeah, let's just hope Mr. Didier Deschamps still believes for some reason that Upamecano is a better centre-half and he has a nice rest during this international break. And one player, I mean, is there anything more Diogo Jota than a predatory finish, the inability sometimes to just trap a bag of cement, the hard work and the mischance? Was it just a Diogo Jota performance?
Yeah, he just is a bit like this, isn't he? He's absolutely prolific, but I just don't think he's ever going to massively help you and build up. And it's interesting, actually, because I don't think, obviously, we've spoken about Nunez a little bit, and we probably will do, I think, later in the pod, but I don't think either centre-forward is like completely nailed down doing what Slot wants. I think he'd look at that Jota performance on Saturday and say, I just wish he was giving me a little bit more in build-up, to be honest, even though he scores the winning goal. So it's an interesting one, really, that. And it is very Jota. I don't think he's ever going to really massively smooth that part of his game out, to be honest. The question is, does it kind of matter if he's scoring winning goals? Right now, clearly not, because Liverpool are top, but we'll see in some of these tougher games, maybe. Do Liverpool need to retain possession better in the final third? Will that matter if it's coming back a little bit more frequently? We'll have to see, but he's got an absolutely unbelievable goal-scoring record. That is one thing he does guarantee you, even though he misses a couple. I'm still, I'm in the mindset of kind of, he misses chances, big chances sometimes, but he does give you the goals. And it's kind of similar to the Erling Haaland thing, where he misses big chances, but he scores you goals. And Nunez maybe falls on the other side of that, as he misses big chances and doesn't give you enough goals. So with Jota, it's not a huge concern that, you're going to get forwards and you get in position a lot, will miss chances. And he probably could have made that game a lot easier on Saturday, but he does. In the end, he scores the only goal of the game, and that's good enough. So whether that tidiness will come in the rest of his game, I'm probably sceptical about that. But for now, it's absolutely fine because he's scoring winners. So that's kind of all that matters, I guess.
Yeah, that's probably right. 26 years old, probably not too much is going to change in realistic terms. And 100 starts, 60 goals, it's still a phenomenal record, isn't it? So, but yeah, goals win matches, and he's the match winner on the Saturday. And he's trying not to stray into the negative, but I mean, misses was a big topic last season. There is still a few you see in, like, Jota misses that header he should bury, the one where Gravenberch cuts it across, he just slices it. Even Salah takes it down brilliantly, then scuffs his volley. I mean, it should have been out of sight. And we've seen a few games where we just missed those chances. Is it better, though, just to be missing now rather than being a big problem while you're not conceding many? Or do you think it could come back as the sting in the tail later on?
Well, one of the interesting things about last season with the misses is that in expected goals terms, I did a big piece on this on YouTube a while back, basically kind of comparing Liverpool's attack to other attacks of teams that were in the title race. And you basically had two huge underperformances in terms of expected goals, which was Nunez and Diaz, fell well below that. And then the rest were kind of in and around, slightly under, Jota over, I think Gakpo's basically on level. So kind of all kind of averaged each other out a little bit, but obviously those Diaz and Nunez underperformances did hurt Liverpool a little bit in the end. But one of the things I think is kind of slightly different, and what doesn't maybe worry me about missed chances as much, is that Liverpool did end up with the highest expected goals for last season. But I think part of that, and I only kind of came to realise this maybe once the season had finished and had a real think about it, is I feel that part of that was that the way they were set up under Jurgen last season was to be high volume in terms of chance creation rather than high quality chance creation. And therefore, so the expected goals for, because it was, you're ending games with 25 shots, was ending up being quite high, but it was more cumulative, more than kind of, yes, some sitters were being missed, but that wasn't really the story of the season because every team misses sitters. It was more the fact that Liverpool were creating high volume, low quality sometimes chances. And some games that would work out and they put away those low quality chances and they would win 5-0. Sometimes it wouldn't and they would lose or you get a bad result or whatever. And they kind of rode that wave right till the end of the season. And then the finishing just got a little bit iffy. And because the chances weren't high quality, they weren't unmissable chances, the finishing just went off and then Liverpool fell out of the title race. So I don't think Slot will be looking at these missed chances thinking this is going to be a problem that's going to bite us on the backside at some point. I think this is, and you look at where the shot map is for Liverpool this season so far, they're trying to create high quality chances within the width of the post more frequently. And I do think that is what's happening. So you're still going to miss chances, and that, like the Jota misses, and like you say, the Salah one, that is going to happen to you from time to time. But if you are continually creating better, high quality chances more frequently, rather than this high volume, low quality ones, then typically you will start to put those away. And I think that was the big difference between City and Arsenal, and then Liverpool. They were operating in a different kind of way, and they had lower XG4, but ended up sort of scoring quite well and doing well despite that. So it wasn't necessarily that Liverpool's attack was actually much better. It was just they were doing it in a different way. So I think with Slot will think these are missed chances. They can happen, but if we keep creating in the way that we are, then the goals will continue to come, and maybe there will be some more games going forward where Liverpool, it all comes together and they slap someone 4-0 or whatever. So I don't think the manager will be too worried about that, and I do think that's an interesting marker of difference between last season and this one, actually.
Yeah, it's, when you think about it, as you said, by now there was a lot more blockbusters, weren't there, last season? You think of like McAllister's against Fulham and things like that. So Bosley had pinged a few, and yeah, we probably wanted to shoot ball, but the goals this season do tend to be, like you said, between the width. It's worked moves, isn't it? You can see a Slot move. So yeah, maybe high quality might work better in that regard.
In fact, you could possibly see that from what you're saying to support that, actually, is that Sober's like not taking on shots from the edge of the box when you think, oh, just go for it. Because I wonder whether the manager's like, if we can get close to get the shot off, let's do it. And there's been a moments where you just think, actually, the better choice there would have been to shoot. So maybe that's kind of the thing that the players are working out, is finding that exact moment to shoot from distance from time to time. But that's kind of interesting, actually, that maybe that's the manager in their heads a little bit. This is where we want to shoot from. This is the chances we're looking for.
Yeah,
so we can get them.
Yeah, might not be many 25-yard screamers, but if we keep winning, who cares, to be honest? And there was two people I felt that didn't want us to win. We'll go on to TNT and Fleck. I mean, they were obsessed with that gay incident, weren't they? And the arm pull. I mean, the slow-mo, then the super slow-mo. And I actually made a tally because I was getting bored of it. 14 times they mentioned it during that last period of the game. I mean, it's just blown all out of proportion. That's never a pen, is it?
I don't know about never a pen, to be honest. I think I've seen him give them, and I think if Simon Hooper gives it on the pitch, if he spots it, then there's every chance. Well, in fact, I know for a fact it doesn't get overturned. Absolutely not, because I don't think they see it as a big error at all. If that gets given, there is a little bit of holding there, but I don't think it's as sort of nailed on as was kind of made out. It just does for me land in that pit, like that area of kind of, I have seen them given, and nothing more than that kind of thing, really. And I didn't think it was the decisive moment of the game, and there was a bit of an obsession about it. They really, really were fixated on it in that last part of the game, as if it was the crucial moment, really. But the reality is Liverpool deserved to win that game quite comfortably, and I just think focusing on that, a little bit of grabbing where, like as you could say, Gay's getting nowhere near the ball anyway, is he? So how much impact did it have on the game? I mean, yeah, I thought the justification for it was absolutely fair from VAR. I think they would have stuck with the ref's decision if he'd given it, but it just wasn't that big of a deal, and I didn't really kind of understand why they were so fixated on it when the game had been so maybe that was the reason, because the game had been so one-sided, and that could have brought Palace into it, would have made it a lot more interesting. But yeah, one of those where I'm pleased it wasn't given, obviously, but I think Van Dijk was taking a little bit of a risk there.
Probably you're right, because you don't get 1-0 thumpings, but it was a dominant performance realistically, and trying to make it a contest, maybe that's what they go for. And Arne Slot has been a calm, cool, collected customer so far. But even you saw the reaction, throwing his arms up and screaming at the fourth official. The Premier League's got to him. Maybe Simon Hooper's got to him. I mean, he even mentioned him post-match as well. What did you think about Simon Hooper's performance?
Yeah, I absolutely loved Slot's reaction. It was so like, oh, welcome to the Premier League, mate. This is what it's like. And I thought his criticism of Simon Hooper after was very measured and good and worth saying as well. It was a bit of a bizarre one, really, from the referee, that in terms of, a team can have 75% possession, and what was the free kick count was kind of 14-0 at one point in Crystal Palace's favour, or something ridiculous like that. That is outrageous, really, and I don't think the refs are going out to do this on purpose, but I just think it's indicative of a ref kind of having a wrong picture of the game and not kind of feeling the game right, or, and giving into every foul or every moment someone goes down on one side, and maybe being influenced by the crowd a little bit on that front. So I didn't think the ref was great. And I think sometimes it's worth focusing on that, actually, when, you do win a game and it's not sour grapes. I did think Simon Hooper had a poor game, really, and didn't, I thought he bought Palace fouls too easily and didn't give Liverpool anything, really, regardless of what was going on. And the moment the slot goes mad at, I think, is maybe the Jota one where he's being held. Yeah. I mean, there've been so many comparable situations that had been given the other way that there was no real holding involved, and it was just kind of back to back, and they would, so to not give that one, I just thought was bizarre. But if you'd have been a bit more consistent in terms of just giving anything where there was any touch, then fair enough, that happens. But that was bizarre, and I'm not surprised that Slot was annoyed, and that I think that's the way to deal with the refereeing, is to bring up, well, look at that free kick count. It was ridiculous when we had so much of the ball. So I like the way he kind of calmly dealt with it after, and I also quite liked to see the passion on the sidelines as well, and the fact that the ref, as cool and as calm as he is, even, these English refs can get to you. So that was good to see, to be honest. But I don't think that's going to be the final time he's annoyed by refereeing performances in the Premier League, to be honest. But just thank goodness that it didn't have any effect on the outcome, and that Simon Hooper, in terms of probably the most influential decision was that he could have possibly given that penalty, and he didn't do that. So thank goodness for that one, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true. And the one thing I thought he did get right, Simon Hooper, was when Lerma made that back, Harry Kane style, for Tsimikas as he went over. That's a yellow card. That's dangerous. And I mean, Tsimikas is right talking about him, because we saw a lot of rotation. I think a lot of people were looking at it, go, Tsimikas against his -R. Is that a wise decision? But he did okay, didn't he, to be fair?
Yeah, I thought he was very, very good. I mean, this, get a bit of nerves, don't you, at times when you see him on the team sheet. I think some supporters not his biggest fan or whatever. And, I saw one of the aggregators had tweeted at the start of the game, he's just been skinned by Sarr, but he hadn't really. These people can get a yard. They're that good. If it happened to Trent, you just wouldn't mention it. So I think sometimes people look for the negatives with him. But for me, he was very, very steady in his defensive work. He obviously makes the goal with a lovely little pass. I thought he was really, constantly available in that sort of. They bring the fullbacks in tight, don't they? And it kind of works. And Tsimikas is very comfortable in those positions. He did well keeping the ball in a lot of tight areas as well. I just think he's a very decent backup. I know he's not an absolute world beater, but he's had a lot of good performances for Liverpool. And I think, this was just another one of them. And to be honest, it kind of surprises me with Tsimikas that he's, I know he's made mistakes at times, but he's your backup left back. He's never going to be perfect. But they all kind of make mistakes. And also, for me, he's someone who should be a little bit more in contention for cult hero status, really. The amount of games he's played in sides that have won trophies. He scored the winning goal, the winning penalty in a cup final. Put that cross in for Virgil van Dijk at Wembley against Chelsea. He's had some really, really influential moments to Liverpool, and has been just, not. I was going to say never let them down when he's come in. Okay, he's had some poor performances in there, but few and far between, to be honest. And I think, he's a much better backup than he gets credit for. I think left back is possibly an area that Liverpool should look to strengthen, because Tsimikas is no longer the backup to the peak Robertson. He's back up to a slightly lesser version of Robertson than we've seen. And therefore, the ideal situation is that you kind of swap one of them for someone who is top class at the peak of the powers again. And I'm not as down on Robertson as some people are, by the way, but I think it's clear he's not the 25-year-old version of himself. So I still think that's an area you can strengthen. But if they're going to job share this season, which is how it kind of looks it's going to work, I still think Tsimikas is very capable of doing that. Can come in tough games like that and do a good job. And I just think I just wish he got a little bit more credit from time to time, because I do think there's a good player there.
It's weird, isn't it? Because if you think of the first goal of the season we scored against Ipswich, is when Trent plays a lovely weighted ball, so Salah can hit that Travailla with the outside of his foot first time, and Jota tucks it in. This was just the same, but the left-hand side, a slight variation. It's a good ball by Tsimikas, so Gakpo doesn't have to break his stride. He can just literally roll it across, and Jota goes first time. So it's a left-hand side version of that goal. But again, Tsimikas does okay. He does seem to get quite a hard time. I don't know what I suppose the expectations of him, and we all want a new left back. I think that's no doubt. But yeah, he did well. And one thing where there's let's call it a peak and a massive trough, Alisson. I mean, let's do the good bit first. He's called upon a few times, and he just does the business every time, doesn't he?
Yeah, I didn't think any of them were kind of out of this world saves. He's just very steady, isn't he? And when you get some of those crosses that come across the box and they bounce just before him, I mean, a lesser keeper could easily spill those, but he's just so solid in those situations and prevents them kind of turning into anything more. So yeah, we know how good he is. He's absolutely vital, and I thought, yeah, very good when he was on the pitch in this one again.
Again, there's the bad side because it's just an innocuous kick. It's that right hammy, and if it was one time, you'd think that's not bad. But as someone put up today, that's 4 hamstrings in 12 months. I mean, that makes you think this one's going to be bad, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is with hamstring injuries as well is that, you know, if you do get one, you're more susceptible to the next one, aren't you? And that's kind of how it works. So it's, yeah, not good news. And it's so strange for a keeper to be getting them. I mean, you know, you just think they don't have to do a lot of sprinting around. I know his position is generally always advanced as well, so he's not kind of, you know, he's not having to do big sprints across long distances that would, you know, you would think would make him susceptible to having these issues. And to get one from just kicking, you know, is there something different they can do to deal with that or to prevent that from happening? I'm not sure if he's just prone to them now and that's it. But it's not great news. And yeah, I suppose the only upside is that Liverpool have got a very good backup. You know, someone who you think can come in and they maybe don't miss a beat. And also, let's talk about Yaros as well. I thought he was absolutely brilliant when he came in. I mean, it's interesting that Slot had spoken about him and said, we've got 3 very good goalkeepers here. He'd gone out of his way to say that early in the season. A good little bit of man management, actually, because clearly Yaros wanted to go out on loan again. He wanted to go and get that experience, but just making him feel involved and mentioning him again. And then that's paid off because when he comes in, you know, he feels part of it. And I just thought he did, you know, a couple of really good claims, really lively off his line, some good, you know, a couple of good moments. So I thought he did really well. So, you know, huge praise because there's no way he expected that to happen either. I mean, you can be as professional as you want and go through your warm-ups and everything, but there's no way he thinks he's coming onto the pitch at any point. And he did. His young goalkeeper making his debut in those circumstances did absolutely brilliantly. And it looks like Liverpool have got another brilliant keeper coming off the conveyor belt there, actually.
Yeah, no doubts. And maybe the funniest part of the weekend was, I don't know if you saw it when he's interviewed post-match, because he kind of looks, the name and the look, you're thinking Ivan Drago in Rocky. And then he opens his mouth and a bit of Warrington and Newton Llewellows comes out, doesn't it, in all honesty?
He did, yeah. It's Newton Llewellows in the Czech Republic, I think he's from. Yeah, it's a funny one, really. But I can't actually get my head around why he sounds like that either, because he would have just learned English in Liverpool and would have sounded more Scouse, but he just sounds like a wool. Can't get my head around it. But yeah, not the voice I expected, but a really, really good performance from him. So fair play to him. And maybe chance in the League Cup coming up for him with Kelleher to play the game. So that's an exciting moment for him. And I hope he does get that, actually, because he deserves it for coming in and doing so well there. You know, and if you need to protect Kelleher a little bit more by not playing him in every game, maybe that's a good opportunity for him. So I'd like to see him get that.
Yeah, definitely a chance. I mean, you mentioned it there. It's, I'd say, a lucky set of circumstances, but if you think of the other 3 that we've got, is there an element of fortune that obviously Kelleher and Yaros are still at the club? Because Slot even said, you know, and both wanted away. And then the second part I wanted to ask you, is there any suspicion that maybe, if you had suggested this, the club might have had this inkling or knowledge about Alisson, so Marma Dashvili's been accelerated a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think with Kelleher and Yaros, definitely an element of fortune, and particularly with Kelleher, that it still is madness to me that no club came in for him, and you know, the fact is, if both of them would have left, then Liverpool would have been signing a couple of goalkeepers to fulfill those roles, and you don't know what you're getting. There is, you know, or you get someone who's coming in who's good enough, but they've got to sort of make that leap, and they've got to get used to playing and coming to a new league, possibly, depending on who you side. So there's a gamble in that. Whereas, you know, from the start of this season, if Kelleher has to come in, you know he can do the job because he's brilliant. So it's a good place to be in, and nice also now to have Yaros there as another one. So it is a good position to be in, and there is an element of fortune to that. And And on the injuries and Mamadashvili, absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, I think when he signed, we spoke about that, the fact that Alisson has been picking up these injuries more frequently, and it is a consideration as he gets older. As I say, with hamstring injuries, once you get one, you start to get more after that. So absolutely. And I mean, maybe it does kind of move you towards a situation where the end of Alisson's time at Liverpool does come a little bit quicker than we maybe expected if he just continues to pick these up. We'll have to see. But I mean, Liverpool are in a really good position now with that, aren't they? Because they don't have to think about it. It's done now. Whenever that end comes for Alisson, and maybe it's the end of this season, maybe it's the end of the next one, maybe it's after that. They've got it sorted now, and they've got the keeper who's going to come in and be the next Liverpool #1. And it's, when you compare that to where they've been with the defensive midfielder situation, it's night and day, really, isn't it? And it's a really, really good position to be in. So, really smart bit of business, that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed by some miracle, but you can't see it. The scan at Spire, however, isn't that bad, but we'll await news on that. And I suppose if we move to off-the-field news, we talked a little bit about the good news around Konate and Quansah. That was the positive. It's got a mixed review, this, hasn't it? The other three. The word that's being used is impasse. That's the one, isn't there, on the three, which I've seen a mix of people like, well, at least they're talking because there wasn't bits on that. There's negotiation. Some people saying that's bad. There's an impasse at this stage. How are you seeing the reporting on that?
I just think it's kind of, I'm not trying to undermine anyone's reporting, but I do think it's kind of a bit of a holding message at the moment. Basically, my read on that is the talks are ongoing, which is all anyone wanted at this point.
Yeah.
I think with the Trent's a case and all in its own, I think Liverpool do need to just get that sorted ASAP. I mean, he's going to be paid an awful lot of money. You want a long-term contract. I don't think that one should be difficult, and I think Liverpool should be just, you don't want to give him everything he wants. It's got to kind of be, there is a bit of a standoff at times, these situations, so it is a negotiation. But I think they just need to sort that one and give him recognition of how important he is to this team, how important he is to the club in general, local lad. Yeah. That one needs to get sorted. But with the Van Dijk and the Salah ones, I said, length of contracts is massive here, particularly with Salah on those kind of wages. That is a tougher negotiation. And now that we know that those contract negotiations are ongoing, that's going to be a bit in back and forth. And maybe there's a chance Salah doesn't sign, by the way. I think that is a live possibility. We've got to accept that because that is a difficult negotiation for me. But the fact that they're ongoing is a positive. Maybe there will be a compromise reached. Which side that comes from, we'll have to see with those two. But I get why that's difficult, why you might reach an impasse at times throughout those negotiations. But with Trent, I don't think that's a situation Liverpool should be getting themselves into. I just think they need to get that one boxed off. So maybe slightly negative feeling around that Trent one off that update. But again, I'm still fairly confident it will get sorted on the basis of the things he's said. And the fact that Liverpool will absolutely be desperate not to let him slip through the fingers and let him go.
Yeah, and to be fair to the reporters, when you report that, well, they've either signed or they haven't. Until they've signed, they're at an impasse, aren't they?
Exactly.
Not too much more you can really say. It's one of those. So, yeah, we'll await further developments. Hopefully not on a random Sunday night this time, but we'll see. And I did, speaking of, I suppose, of other players, I know you wrote that piece on your Substack, the one for Darwin Nunez, which is free, so a lot of people quoting that. I mean, it was an interesting one. It was kind of, I was like wincing, but you can't debate fact, if you know what I mean, at times, in terms of like his passes and the way he is. The more this goes on as well, I was going to ask you, we've always talked, it's early doors, and we said before on this pod, it's sample size. We're 10 games in. It clearly looks like, as much as you're right, I think he's not quite fully convinced on both. Jota is the starting number 9, if you want to call it that. It's looking more and more difficult as time goes on for Darwin Nunez, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I got a bit of stick for this one. I think people sometimes think, it's coming at things with an agenda or whatever. My contention here is I just write what my honestly held opinion is. And I've watched Darwin Nunez now for 2 seasons and the 2 months or whatever it's been. And I just don't see it. And I'm not saying my opinion is gospel on that, but I really, really struggle to see it. I mean, already coming into this season, I think we've spoken about this before on the podcast. This is a massive season for him. Now we're already, because it's his third year at Liverpool, he has to put it together. He has to score enough. He has to assist enough. He has to look like a convincing number 9 in a Liverpool team that wants to win everything. And the problem is that we're 2 months into it now. We're at the second international break, and he isn't in the team, which, by the way, people have been saying, well, he hasn't had the chances, but those two things are not separate in terms of judgment of his ability versus him being in the team, because the fact is, if he was doing well enough in training to convince the manager he could be better than Jota, he would be in the team. He just isn't showing that. So the not starting is actually damning of him. And then when he comes in, I just don't think he's done very well. I thought he was actually okay against Bournemouth. I thought his general all-round game, and then he scored. I thought a pretty decent effort from him. I thought that performance was pretty good, but I think everything else we've seen from him really so far this season hasn't been very good. And I thought he was so bad against Bologna, to be honest. The 4 out of 12 passes completed, there's no one can tell me that is good enough from a starting centre forward. He's just miles off it. And I think, people saying, oh well, he's he made the goal that was scored. He didn't really. I mean, the ball comes into him. He plays a 5-yard pass out wide. I genuinely think most of us could do that. It wasn't a difficult moment or a great touch, or he was just part of the build-up in it, which, fair enough, credit for that. But it wasn't an outstanding bit of football. It was pretty basics, really. And then the brilliance is Salah's ball in, and obviously the movement from McAllister, which, by the way, Nunez should be making that move and should be the one on the end of it if he had those instincts. So I just don't think his game is there. And I think we are 2 months into this season now, which is a crucial season. He's going to have a massive few months ahead, isn't he, to convince everyone. It's going to have to turn very suddenly, and then he's going to have to score goals and do really well. And again, more replies I kind of got about his goal and assist numbers last season. But I just didn't think he was playing particularly well throughout the season. And he doesn't have the Europa League this time to sort of bolster those numbers. It's Champions League only, so that's tougher. And the fact is, Liverpool need a centre forward who's going to be a consistent goal threat and good in build-up in the Premier League and the same in the Champions League, because that's the level he wants to play at. And I personally am not seeing it with him. And I know so many supporters are behind him, and I wonder if sometimes that is down to, really wanting to kind of, a bit of desperation for him to be a success with the amount of money that Liverpool spent on him. But personally, the manager's not convinced. I'm not convinced. I just really am struggling to see it happening for him at Liverpool. And my feeling now, even though it's only October, and I know people would say you're writing him off early, but it is his third season, is that I think when we get to the end of this season, I don't think there will be a future for him at Liverpool. And I'd love to be wrong. I'd love him to go on a crazy run and show everyone that he can be that player. But I just don't think the consistency of playing that high enough level is there. And I think he will eventually go down as a pretty poor signing for Liverpool, to be honest.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Maybe it might even benefit that he can now play, because Kaz has suspended that Uruguay ban as well, so he is travelling for internationals. Maybe a bit of football might actually do him any good. But yeah, it's interesting. Even the way Slot spoke in the press conference about our number 9s aren't getting that many goals, you do wonder if a new number 9, aside from anything with Salah, he's targeted this summer. It would be zero surprise at all.
That is it, exactly. I thought it was really interesting from Slot, actually, and I think he was right about that. I don't think Jota is actually playing that well in build-up either, although he is better than Nunez in that regard, even though he's still quite sloppy. And it makes you think that come the end of the season, whether that is a position that Liverpool feel that they need to strengthen in, because I just think, Jota has got those rough edges on his game. He's still extremely prolific and he's versatile, so you absolutely keep him about, no question about that, really. But whether they would just love to swap Nunez for someone who's a bit more competent in build-up in central areas. And actually, what's quite interesting, we've seen Chiesa in there in a couple of sub-appearances. So when he's fit, do we see a little bit more of him in that area? And if he can provide a goal threat, does he start, get some starts there? Really interested to see how that plays out. But I think, going forward, it's going to be Jota there as long as he's fit. Now, I think Nunez is going to massively struggle to get games. And if that's the case and we get towards the sort of halfway point of this season, I just don't think there's any kind of way for him to salvage that. I mean, I'm kind of interested because I get a lot of pushback on this on social media, and kind of similarly to whenever I criticise Naby Keita, who, by the way, I'd like to think I was right about See that he can't get a game from Werder Bremen now. But I don't know. Do you have any sort of counterpoints to that, or feeling that he will come good, or because I maybe I am wrong. I'm wrong all the time about football. But do you see anything that kind of makes you think he's going to turn it or make it happen?
In a weird way, when a new manager comes in, there's always that bit where there's usually some players get a second chance and reborn, and there's some who are dropped. It might actually be, for all the switch around, Darwin Nunez was better suited to a Jurgen Klopp team than a Arne Slot team. More chaos, more direct, more just pace to burn, that ball in behind, that suits him very much. As you mentioned, it's that key word. It's the build-up for Slot, isn't it? It's calm, it's calculated. The striker tends to, when he gets the ball, needs to usually have a good touch, maybe lay off, keep it going, that type of thing, which, as you said, even Jota isn't probably quite, I suspect, at the level what Slot wants. And then probably, if you're honest, Nunez's build-up is a level below. The one thing you see, could there be any success? He works his tail off, he presses, there's no doubts about that. He's aggressive in that side. Pace will always be a weapon. And I do sometimes look at Liverpool and think, when it's Jota in the middle, Gakpo on the left, and Salah, they're not slow, but they're not electric. It's the two that are electric. Is Diaz are the ones that, he can go in behind and devastate us. And centre-halves do have that with Nunez. But at the same, so they're always going to be a bit nervous with Nunez around. But at the same time, it might just bounce off it, or he might not control it. And I think probably the one because I was at that Bologna game. I was in the lower Annie. It was interesting. The early doors, you're right. He controlled it. It wasn't special, but he controlled it quite well. There was a few times like that, and he laid it out wide for the goal. The run was a bit unlucky because it was only, I know everyone's like, Nunez is always offside. He was just a little bit offside. He nearly timed it right. Any striker would get caught. The finish was good, by the way, but it doesn't count. And you just saw his shoulders slump.
Yeah.
And that's it. And after that, literally, there was 10 minutes after that, there was a guy said to us, just next to us, shouted he can't even control it. And he just his confidence just evaporated and went away. When he's good, he is good. And we did see that under Klopp last season. I think that's what people are pinning on to. He does tend to be a bit streaky, I think, like Jota. When he's bad, there ain't no confidence there, and he's pretty horrific at times. That would be the other side. But the ultimate thing, as you kind of alluded to, I think it comes back to, there is things there to like about Darwin Nunez. There's tools for, I think, maybe another team to take. I know that sounds harsh, but we'll look at that. But I don't think Edwards, I don't think Ward, and I don't think Arne Slot particularly fancy would be my take on the situation.
That's kind of the key, isn't it? Is if those three don't, kind of see him as the future, and they don't think he's of the level, then they will be ultimately the ones who make the decision. And I agree, actually. I think because he has got those weapons and he can get on these runs of scoring goals, I think there's a team of a decent level out there who will take him and he'll do a good job there. But I just think Liverpool want to be the best team in the world, and I'm not sure he's the centre forward for that team, which is, a shame it's kind of not working out. But, and I know fans absolutely love him, but I do think that's one of the tough decisions that will be made at the end of this season. And, hopefully he can contribute to trophies being won in the meantime, and he can get some crucial goals, because, we've seen in the past he's capable of that. And, the goal numbers weren't too bad last season, and if he gets them in the right moments, it could be what propels Liverpool to winning something. But yeah, it's just in that long term, I'm not massively convinced. I don't think the powers that be are convinced either, to be honest.
Yeah, and listen, you can call me a hypocrite. I'm desperate to succeed, and when he scores the next one, I will chant Nunez, so wherever all that. But yeah, it's the one thing that can't be avoided. That big elephant in the room is people always talk about sample sizes. 3 seasons now. 3 seasons was always going to be the judgment. You can't move it on from there, people. One South American who we don't want to travel, and I was a bit alarmed to see this morning quite a few reporting he's joined up in Miami. Alexis McAllister. He played it down, didn't he, David, on social media to say, no, it's good, I'm travelling. But you think this season he's so important. He had the abductor issue on last international duty. They kind of nursed him through it. He's come off. They didn't play him second half. Have you got this fear that this is just waiting to almost go twang and we've got a long-term issue here?
Yeah, it's a little bit worrying. Liverpool are showing kind of an excess of caution in bringing him off at the weekend. I don't think it felt too bad, but I think they're looking to protect him. But then, the ideal situation then would have been he just doesn't go away and he lets it rest for a couple of weeks and then he comes back and he's fully fit. So it is a real shame he's going, to be honest, and it is a worry. There's no getting away from it. I agree. You kind of hope that Argentina have a look at him and think, well, first game at least we'll just have to leave him out and maybe they can get around that. I'm not actually sure who they've got and whether that's possible or they've got important games or not. But yeah, you'd kind of like it to see him nowhere near them really if possible, because he's just so vital for Liverpool. And if he gets a long-term injury, I think Liverpool very suddenly start to look quite thin in central midfield. Actually, we've spoken about the fact that the options there, you've got Curtis Jones beyond the initial three, and then after that, manager's not a big Endo fan, even though I thought he was brilliant, by the way, when he came on at Palace. Did exactly the job that was asked of him. But he's not, he's not a massive Endo fan in terms of starting him, particularly in the long term. You've known by Chetic now because he's out on loan. Morton's playing for the under-21s, and I would expect to leave in January, to be honest, if a club can get a deal over the line. So, it's looking a little thin in central midfield at the moment.
Yeah, it is worrying. I'd have given Endo man of the match just for that little handball swipe. Kept till there, but yeah, fingers crossed with McAllister because it is worrying. Yeah, having a look now at Argentina, I mean, they look like they're going to qualify. Venezuela and Peru, who you'd expect them to be. Yeah, maybe Mr. Scaloni could just send him back, but we'll see. One manager or head coach, give him his proper title, we need to talk about. I mean, Arne Slot, and there's two parts I want to ask you about here. I mean, the first part is, I'm still fascinated by his press conferences, and I know you're in the room, but just the way he clarifies the question, the method of communicating, even sometimes the joking he has with journalists, but the way he probes question. There was even one the other day, I'm sure you saw it, or heard it. It just almost said, well, I've answered that kind of already, so, we'll move on. It's just got such a distinct communication style. It's impressive, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's different to Jurgen as well. I mean, he's a lot more kind of forthright, really, and I quite like it. I mean, he seems much more comfortable now as well than he did maybe in the first few years. I think he's really sort of settling into it now and comfortable in his own skin. He's got a few results behind him as well, which always helps in terms of, I think he was very keen in those first few not to be a guy who just talks and then, can't back it up on the pitch. He's really sort of keen to. Now he's got a little bit of a body of work behind him and can back it up. He feels a little bit more comfortable. So I think we're seeing the fruits of that, which is really good. And yeah, like I say, noticeable that he's different to Jurgen. But I like it. He's being himself as well, which again is absolutely crucial. He can't be that Klopp tribute act. He would just fall flat on its face if he tried to do that. So he's going to be himself and be direct. And I like the way he answers questions. He always really kind of listens, and he's just being Arne Slot, which is what you want. You want the manager to come in and be himself and put his own stamp on the team, but also every way that he communicates with the press, which is basically the way he communicates then with the supporters, isn't it? So yeah, I've been impressed by him, and we're seeing a little bit more of his personality now, which is great.
And yeah, you're right. He obviously settled it, even starting to almost understand the place. I love the answer the other day. Well, would the players be overawed? Like, no, we're Liverpool. These players are used to being top of the team. You just feel like he's settling in and becoming part of the club. I mean, he almost can't escape that Forest one, mainly because he brings it up every other week. But it was that question he was asked. He said it's a brilliant start. Well, he said it's not brilliant because we haven't won them all. It's 9 out of 10 results. I suppose there's always the element is you're always going to look good, aren't you, when you're winning all the games type of thing. But they're doing it with a style. We're seeing that already, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we said it in the last pod after people were kind of really downbeat after the Wolves game that I think people should be more excited about this. It's absolutely mad. I did not think that Liverpool at the start of the season, and we knew what the fixture list was going to be, by the way, no way did I say they would be winning 9 out of 10. They'd be top of the Premier League. They'd be 2 from 2 in the Champions League. I did not think there was any chance of that. I thought there'd be bumps like Forest and a lot more frequently. Thought, games where you'd go away from home and maybe get spanked 3-0 unexpectedly because he's not factored in what this kind of Premier League challenge is like. And actually on that, what he keeps dropping in press conferences, I notice, is he is going back watching games from seasons back against certain opposition. Yeah. Real good feel of what they're like. He's and I know a lot of managers do the research or whatever, but he is clearly very thorough in this. And he keeps mentioning in moments from games and old games, and you're kind of like, well, how's he he's really, really doing his research on not just kind of their last 4 games or whatever to have a look at how they've played in that, but what it was like the last time Liverpool played them, to see how that kind of worked and what the matchups were and how the game went. So, he's really, really thorough in that regard, which I think is really helping in terms of giving him making it look like he's come to the Premier League and it's easy, and he's adapted to it straight away. It's because he's doing his homework, basically. So, yeah, it's been an absolutely phenomenal start, really. And, he does still talk about that Forest one. It still clearly kind of sticks in the craw. But I think even that is starting to look better now when you look at the start that Forest have had. And they are a decent side. And I think going to give a few big sides a bit of an upset this season in terms of, they've got the perfect kind of physicality and ability to counter that will make them really difficult for big sides to control. So, and they've got a lot of quality and a manager who, Forest are almost growing into that Wolves of a few years back who bloodied the nose of Man City multiple times. They look capable of doing that. So I think even that one doesn't look too bad. And I think he's learned a lot from that as well. And the fact is, Liverpool have not just won these games, but they've looked good while doing so. Their expected goals the expected goals against is definitely the best in the Premier League, and they've got the best defensive record. Expected goals for is there or thereabouts in terms of best in the Premier League. So the underlying numbers show that they're a really good side, both sides of the ball, and the results show it as well. So, big tests to come in this next few weeks in terms of the fixtures get a lot more difficult, and we will learn an awful lot. But anyone who expected more out of this start I'm surprised if anyone did, to be honest. And it's been absolutely brilliant. So huge credit to the manager, credit to the players, of course, for adapting to what he's asking them as well. But I think it's really set up quite excitingly now to bounce into this run of fixtures. And if you get a few results in the first few of these, confidence is going to go through the roof, and everyone's going to start to think, actually, Liverpool are in a title challenge here, and Liverpool are contenders to the Champions League. And that's what we hope will happen. Maybe not. But, there's no taking away from the fact it's been a brilliant start.
Yeah. Anyone who wouldn't have said that a snapped your hand off for 9 out of 10 is just an outright liar, in all honesty. So we'd have all taken it in a heartbeat. And yeah, it's funny you just mentioned the other teams. Even the players have said, yeah, we get a lot more video clips. There's been reports of more video meetings and analysis. So very much sort of meticulous in the way he does things. I suppose there's so many positives to like about what he's done so far. What is the most pleasing aspect for you personally about what you've seen from Arne Slot today?
It's just how solid they are, how good defensively, and not just defensively, the two lads at centre half who are playing so well. It's just the team. It's so hard to score against. You look at shot maps of the opposition after each of these games, and they're just getting nowhere near the centre of the box to get shots off. It's absolute madness. Like Van Dijk says, even one of the goals they give away in the Premier League is a chance that they had to basically set up themselves via 3 deflections or whatever. So, they're just really, really hard to score against, which again, it was one of the main criticisms of Jurgen's last season, that we just looked in transition really easy to play through at times, even though the results were really good. In transition was quite difficult at times, and eventually it felt like that was going to tell, and it did. Whereas this time, I think, defensively so good, so solid, and that's happened so quickly and hasn't come at the expense of the attacking either, which is just, the toughest thing to do as a manager. So the fact he's got him adapted to all this, even though there are massive similarities in terms of play style, the fact he's got him adapted to these elements that have improved Liverpool so quickly is just a massive achievement. And you hope that, I'm sure that what's helped massively is that the fixture list has been kind, and they've not had too many, crazy tests in there in terms of, you're coming up against teams who are kind of low on confidence and things like that. But that they've built this foundation in that time is perfect, because, as I say, the confidence is up now going into these bigger tests, and it's set Liverpool up really brilliantly. And I do think actually we spoke about when the fixtures came out, that it is a chance to build confidence, to have a strong start, and then you can use that. And so they've done that far better than I ever expected. And now to go into this run now, and like I say, a few results in that, and then all of a sudden it's looking really, really rosy. So yeah, amazing from the manager, really. And I am excited to see how he gets on now in these bigger games, and how good Liverpool look in that. Because the flip side to some of it actually is that in these bigger games, teams might come out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Chelsea might come and think that they can go toe-to-toe with Liverpool now because they've had a decent start. And if that happens, then I think Liverpool would just tear them to shreds, because they just think they're that good. So I'm looking forward to that actually, and seeing how that plays out and how Liverpool are getting on. And I already can't kind of wait for that Chelsea game to see how Liverpool do there.
Yeah, it will be interesting. And I suppose because I was going to ask you about this. Everyone, and quite rightly, is talking about the next 10 games. There's almost that negative element said these have been easy, but it's the next 10 games. But it has been a brilliant start. But on these 10, I mean, you look at that fixture list, you go Chelsea at home, Leipzig away, Arsenal away, and it goes through and all the way to Villa and that crescendo of obviously Manchester City, Real Madrid. You try not to hype things too much, but they are season defining, these 10 games, aren't they, really?
Yeah, potentially, yeah. I mean, if you lose all of them, absolutely the season defining, because you go from being in a title race maybe to scrapping for top four or whatever. So it's yeah, I suppose they are season defining in that sense. But it's going to give us a really good idea of where this team's up to, and I think we haven't seen many teething problems so far, and these teams have got a much bigger chance of sort of exposing areas where the tactics aren't quite bedded in, or there's not an understanding in certain areas or whatever, or, if there are real weaknesses that we haven't seen exposed yet, these are the teams that are more likely to be able to do it. So really kind of interested to see how that goes. But as I say, my overriding feeling is just kind of looking forward to it, because I just think all the signs are very, very good. And you want the team to be tested now and to show just how good it is, and also kind of silence any of those doubts about, oh, well, look, they've only played X, Y, and Z. Well, if you start to win some of these, then, people will, where are the question marks coming from then? There probably won't be too many. So, yeah, really, really interested to see how they get on, and just looking forward to it, really.
Yeah, no doubt. So I suppose the only question marks might be this bloody international break. Seems to just come at all the wrong times. And we know pretty much all our players essentially are going away. There's no way of avoiding that. I pretty much think it's just that nerves. I suppose we don't need to talk too much about internationals because no one really wants to, but if there was one player you could put in cotton wool right now, just one who you wouldn't send away, or you could just use your exemption on, as it were, who would you use that on?
I think right now for this international break, it probably would be McAllister, just on the basis that he is actually carrying something and there's a real risk that he goes and exacerbates it. And I think he's absolutely vital. Again, he's probably gone under the radar a little bit because the man next to him, Gravenberch, has been just absolutely outstanding. So for this international break, probably McAllister. But I think in terms of Liverpool's most important player now, who I would absolutely would like not to go on international break, is probably Van Dijk, to be honest. I think, just the way he's playing, the calmness he brings, the leadership, Liverpool just absolutely need him. So, I mean, if they could all just pull out with minor tweaks that would just have them ready for Chelsea, that would be fantastic. But I don't think that's the way it's going to play out, unfortunately. One little boost will be maybe if Argentina sent McAllister back, but we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I suppose you say it's cynical, but I really don't care. I like so far, and I don't like Arsenal, please, people, as I'm saying this by any means, but Arsenal have now withdrawn because Havertz has pulled out of the Germany squad. That's 5 players from international duty. You just wonder, could we cook it up a little bit? I don't know if you can get a fake certificate from the Spire or anything like that. Yeah, you do just wonder, will it count against us? Fingers crossed and everything for this international break. And I mean, as we always do, we finish talking about other wider football, obviously international break coming up. Usually this is the time when clubs go, okay, we need to make the change now, isn't it? Second international. We kind of alluded to who might be in trouble, but we've got a bigger picture now of who's struggling, who might be for the job. Do you think the axe does fall on anyone during this international break?
I don't think it will. I think all the clubs who are kind of down there would feel that there's mitigation and that they can kind of get out of it. Gary O'Neill might be under a bit of pressure at Wolves, but I think they'll maybe give him till the next international break, surely, just to kind of see how he gets on. And because I think their performances have been better. I think Slot spoke about it before the game. I thought they were pretty good against Liverpool. I know not great against Brentford. I saw that, but I think they were pretty decent against Liverpool, and they've had a hard start, and confidence has maybe been knocked by that. But I think he's a manager who knows how to set up a team, and I think he will. The other side of the international break has a good chance really of getting them out of it, or I hope so anyway, because I think he's a decent coach and seems like a nice lad as well. So I'd like to see them kind of thingy. So I generally think I think all the managers, Glasner again with Crystal Palace, they've lost important players. Yeah. It's kind of been a slow start for them. I think all of them, you're looking at giving them time. Russell Martin at Southampton maybe under a bit of pressure, but again, it's very early days in their kind of return to the Premier League, and nobody had kind of expected them coming up last season anyway. So I don't think anyone will get the chop. The one I think should, obviously, is Erik ten Hag. I think it's mad that he's still holding on to his job. Those 2 draws and the manner that they were secured should not be enough to save your job when your team is this bad. Again, it's kind of that Nunez thing of, oh, well, he needs more time because it's a new regime under Ineos, but he's consistently shown that he isn't of the level. And I just think, United, their hierarchy at the moment, have got to think, can we see a world in 2 years' time where Erik ten Hag wins the Premier League and the Champions League? And the fact is, there's just no chance. He isn't a good enough coach. And so, he should just save himself some time and sack him now. But, I suppose from a Liverpool perspective, just keep him in there. Why not? But it's madness. Or sack him and get Gareth Southgate, whatever. But I just think it's madness that are hanging on, because I can guarantee now, I'll put my neck on the line, he's 100% getting sacked before the end of the season. Before the halfway point of the season, he will be sacked.
Yeah, it's just a slow, drawn out, painful death. And I like to think we've got compassion on this show, but I'm enjoying every second of it. I've got brilliant so far. And the final question is, people talked about what would the expectations be of Arne Slot. And I think one thing that struck me this season is it's almost City, Liverpool and Arsenal are a level above everything else in the Premier League. You look at the race for fourth. I mean, Spurs yesterday and just the collapse against Brighton. United seem out of it. Villa are very good under Emery and they get a brilliant result against Bayern Munich, but then it's just the squad, isn't it? And the injuries they're picking up, and you just wonder, can they keep that going the later it goes as well? I really wouldn't put my neck on the line, so I'm going to ask you to put yours on the line. Who would you go for fourth in this one at the moment?
I think for me, I totally agree. It's going to be that top 3, and hopefully Liverpool's top of it. We'll see, but then it is that scrap for fourth. And one of the reasons I kind of don't fancy Villa, even though I think they're probably the team who are the most cohesive, the best coached team out of any of the contenders, is I just think the Champions League is going to hurt them. I just think it's a big ask emotionally. Physically, it's going to put a lot of strain on that squad, which is unfortunate. I know they're close to getting a couple of players back, aren't they, in Kamara and Mings, so maybe that will massively help them. We'll see whether that can give them a boost. But I just think, as good as Emery is, I just think that squad is maybe going to struggle with that. And the other contenders, Tottenham, I think, are too flaky. I think they'll be in the top 6, but I just think getting to fourth, they probably won't get enough points for that. And the reason I fancy Chelsea, and Chelsea, the team I'm going to pick, is not just because they're there right now, but I just think they've got a decent squad. They've only got the Conference League, which is really not going to take much out of them. They don't have to put much in that to probably go and win it. But also, they've got a decent enough squad with what they've got, even though it's been built in ridiculous fashion. And with that amount of money spent, they should surely be contending for the league, and I don't think they will be. But they've also got the best player in the Premier League, I think, in Cole Palmer at the moment. And I just think he's going to come up with a magic in enough games. They've got generally enough throughout the squad that will get them over the line to get, 2 points per game usually gets your Champions League football. So I kind of fancy Chelsea to do that. I just think Cole Palmer will get them over the line and turn them into a side that's good enough to get fourth, really, even though that, like I say, with the amount of money they spent, they should be so much more than that. But they're the team I kind of fancy to do that, because I think Villa will be drained. I think Tottenham are too flaky, and that Conference League probably nudges it over the line for Chelsea for me.
Yeah, and Cole Palmer's not even in their Conference League squad, and one injury, they've got about 12 players waiting to come in as well, which the others haven't. So yeah, I could well understand that. It'll be interesting to see.
I kind of fancied Newcastle early in the season, but then I've seen them a couple of times and they've really disappointed me, to be honest. I thought if they got fewer injuries and they, Eddie Howe is a good coach, and the style of football they play can get results, but yeah, it's not been a fantastic start really for them. So just, not been hugely convincing, but things change really quickly, and the points are so tight there that, could ask by the next international break and maybe Tottenham have got on a run but so it's probably just taking the easy way out, I guess, to say Chelsea now, because they are sat there. But I just think Cole Palmer is so influential, he's so good, and I expect him to be this good for the entire season, that I just think he will be probably the difference maker, because he's the best player that any of those teams have got, really.
Yeah, indeed. It's so hard to read. And yeah, there's a lot to come before the next international break. Liverpool hopefully return, hopefully beat Chelsea and damage those hopes. and hopefully there are no further injuries. So, with time, ladies and gents, all it leaves me to say as ever is, David, for the insight, the answer, and the detail, much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters for Anfield Index.